Where you going, General?
Berlin! I'm gonna personally shoot that paper-hanging son of a bitch!
Patton wasn't just a war epic, it became a battlefield behind the scenes. The film's creation sparked clashes, close calls, and unexpected twists that ended up stranger than anything shown on screen. From fierce creative tensions to decisions that nearly shut the production down, the real story is far more intense than audiences ever realized. Fact 1. George C. Scott's explosive relationship with award shows. Long before Patton made him a household name, George C. Scott had already built a reputation for despising award ceremonies. To him, trophies weren't symbols of artistic achievement. They were meaningless contests, a sentiment he expressed repeatedly in interviews. Scott believed competition had no place in art, and he openly criticized the idea of ranking performances as if actors were athletes. While some retellings exaggerate his hostility, the verified statements alone reveal a man fiercely protective of his craft. His refusal to play along with Hollywood's award culture set the stage for future conflicts, especially once Patton pushed him into the spotlight. The industry expected gratitude, but Scott responded with blunt honesty that shocked insiders. This tension didn't just influence how he approached publicity, it shaped the aura around Patton itself, hinting at deeper clashes that would unfold behind the scenes. His stance wasn't rebellion for show, it was conviction carved from years of principle. Fact 2. The Pentagon's mixed feelings about the film. The Pentagon's relationship with Patton was far from straightforward. Although the U.S. military did provide some level of cooperation, the support was limited and often hesitant. Official records show concerns about how the film portrayed military leadership, discipline, and internal conflict. Speculation clearly stated, some film historians believe early resistance may have been influenced by political sensitivities of the era, especially as the country faced growing tensions surrounding real-world conflicts. Because cooperation wasn't guaranteed, the production had to get creative. Instead of relying entirely on American resources, the team negotiated access to tanks, vehicles, and equipment from foreign militaries, particularly European nations willing to help. These workarounds added complexity and cost, but ultimately gave the film its massive battlefield realism. The Pentagon's cautious stance didn't stop the movie, but it forced the filmmakers to push boundaries and improvise under pressure, setting the tone for the production's unpredictable journey. Fact 3. The opening speech that nearly changed the film's rating. The iconic opening speech in Patton didn't just introduce the character, it pushed the boundaries of what studios could get away with at the time. The monologue blended excerpts from real speeches with rewritten lines designed to amplify Patton's blunt, fiery personality. That intensity triggered debates within the rating board, which felt the language and tone came dangerously close to requiring a stricter classification. Some advisors argued the speech captured Patton's spirit, while others worried audiences might see it as too abrasive for a mainstream release. Early drafts contained even harsher wording, later toned down to avoid pushing the film into a more restrictive rating category. The final version still shocked viewers, setting the tone for a film unafraid to show its subject's flaws and ferocity. That opening moment didn't just define the character, it established the film's raw, confrontational energy from its very first frame. Fact 4. The real tanks and dangerous maneuvers behind the chaos. The tank sequences in Patton weren't crafted with modern safety standards, which gave them an unpredictable, almost feral energy on screen. The production used real military vehicles, many of them older models with unreliable steering and braking systems. Cast and crew often worked within inches of massive machinery that could become hazardous with even minor mechanical failure. George C. Scott insisted on performing most scenes himself. Riding on moving tanks and standing exposed during maneuvers meant to simulate combat intensity. Several near accidents were documented, including moments when vehicles slipped on loose terrain or came too close to extras. These weren't staged mishaps. They were genuine risks created by tight schedules and limited safety oversight. While the crew always aimed to keep conditions controlled, the reality was far more chaotic than audiences realized. The resulting footage felt shockingly real because, in many ways, the danger on set was real too. Fact 5. The fierce creative clash between Scott and Schaffner. George C. Scott and director Franklin J. Schaffner brought out the best and worst in each other during Patton's production. Their working styles couldn't have been more different. Scott approached the role with raw, emotional intensity, while Schaffner favored a controlled, methodical approach to each scene. This mismatch led to heated arguments that sometimes halted filming entirely. Verified accounts from crew members describe moments when Scott would deliver a take in a deliberately flat tone just to challenge Schaffner's direction. Yet despite the friction, their conflict fed the film's emotional power. Scott often channeled his real frustration into scenes that demanded Patton's explosive temperament, creating performances that felt almost too authentic. While some behind-the-scenes stories may be exaggerated in retellings, the documented tension between actor and director is undeniable. This storm of clashing egos ended up shaping one of cinema's most unforgettable portrayals, proving that creative conflict can sometimes spark cinematic greatness. Fact 6. The heated battle over historical accuracy. The making of Patton wasn't just a filmmaking challenge. It became a tug-of-war over how the general should be remembered. Historians brought onto the project frequently disagreed with the script's portrayal, arguing that certain scenes simplified Patton's complex personality and relationships. Some questioned how the film depicted key events, noting that dramatic pacing sometimes took priority over strict accuracy. These disagreements weren't minor. They led to intense exchanges between advisors and the writing team. While some accounts overstate the hostility of these debates, it's well documented that multiple consultants pushed for revisions, hoping to prevent the film from leaning too heavily into myth-making. In the end, not every concern was addressed, and compromises became inevitable. What remained was a version of Patton shaped as much by cinematic needs as by historical record, reminding viewers that even the most detailed war epics must balance authenticity with storytelling. Fact 7. The budget crisis that nearly broke the studio. Patton may look like a perfectly controlled epic on screen, but behind the scenes its budget was constantly spiraling out of control. Unpredictable weather, shifting locations, and the enormous logistical demands of coordinating military vehicles drove costs far beyond what the studio expected. Production notes show that delays piled up quickly, and each setback pushed the film deeper into financial uncertainty. Crew members later recalled moments when higher-ups questioned whether the project should even continue. While some retellings dramatized the chaos, the documented cost overruns alone were enough to alarm executives. To keep filming alive, the team had to stretch resources, rework schedules, and negotiate for additional funding, often at the last minute. What looked like a polished war epic was built on the edge of collapse, with every scene representing another gamble. The film's eventual success didn't erase the risk. It simply proved how close Patton came to falling apart mid-battle. Fact 8. The unpredictable casting journey behind Patton. The road to casting. George C. Scott as Patton was far more complicated than it looks today. Several major actors were approached first, each turning down the role for their own reasons. Some felt the character was too abrasive, others weren't drawn to war films at the time. Studio executives debated endlessly, unsure whether Scott's intense, uncompromising style was the right fit. Verified reports show that he wasn't the early favorite, largely because his outspoken personality made some insiders nervous. Speculation, clearly stated. Some film historians believe the studio feared he would clash with the creative team, adding unnecessary tension. But once producers saw Scott's stage work, they recognized the raw force he could bring to the role. That decision reshaped the film's identity. What began as a chaotic casting process ended with a performance that defined the entire movie and became one of the most striking portrayals in Hollywood history. Fact 9. The political edges that were softened before release. Early versions of Patton contained sharper political undertones, especially in scenes that subtly echoed real tensions of the era. Some of these lines appeared too close to ongoing debates, prompting the studio to worry about how audiences might interpret them. Script comparisons and verified interviews with the writing team confirmed that certain remarks were toned down or removed to keep the focus on Patton himself rather than contemporary parallels. While the film never aimed to be political commentary, its portrayal of military leadership naturally sparked concern among executives who feared it could be read through a modern lens. Speculation, clearly stated, some scholars suggest the studio also wanted to avoid drawing attention to divisive events happening outside theaters at the time. Whether or not that was intentional, the adjustments left the final script more character-driven. What remains is a version of Patton shaped by both creative intention and cautious refinement. Fact 10. The risky locations that pushed the crew to their limits. The sweeping landscapes seen in Patton came with real danger, as many filming locations were unpredictable and physically demanding. The production often worked in remote areas with limited infrastructure, where weather conditions could shift without warning. Verified accounts describe sudden storms, uneven terrain, and temperature extremes that forced the crew to adapt on the fly. Some scenes took place near active military zones, adding another layer of unpredictability that required constant caution. While more dramatic versions of these stories circulate today, The confirmed challenges alone were enough to disrupt schedules and heighten tension on set. Equipment failures and transportation delays became routine obstacles, pushing everyone involved to stay flexible. Despite the hardships, these rugged environments gave the film its striking authenticity. The raw landscapes weren't just backgrounds, they shaped the tone of the movie itself, capturing the harshness and scale of the wartime settings the story aimed to portray. Fact 11. The internal doubts that threatened the film's release. Inside the studio, Patton wasn't universally welcomed. Some executives felt war epics were risky investments during a politically sensitive era, and they questioned whether audiences would embrace a film centered on such a polarizing figure. Production memos from the period confirm real disagreements about marketing, budget allocation, and even the film's tone. Certain decision-makers pushed for a more cautious approach, fearing that the movie's blunt portrayal of military leadership might spark controversy. Speculation, clearly stated. Some film commentators believed these doubts led to internal hesitation that occasionally slowed progress. Although there's no verified evidence of deliberate sabotage, what is documented is that the project frequently had to justify its direction to skeptical higher-ups. This tension created an atmosphere where the creative team felt they had something to prove. Ironically, those doubts only pushed the filmmakers to refine their vision, resulting in a film that surpassed expectations and reshaped the war epic genre. Fact 12. The Patton family's divided reaction to the film. The Patton family had mixed feelings about the general's portrayal, and their reactions added another layer of complexity to the film's development. Verified reports show that some relatives felt the movie emphasized Patton's harsher traits while downplaying qualities they believed defined him more accurately. Their concerns centered on moments where dramatic tension overshadowed historical balance. While the production team consulted available records, certain personal details weren't included due to limited access to private family archives. Speculation, clearly stated. Some film analysts suggest this lack of access may have deepened the family's hesitation, though there is no confirmed hostility. What is documented is that the filmmakers acknowledged the family's perspective and made selective adjustments to ensure the portrayal remained respectful while still serving the narrative. The final depiction reflects this careful balance, a character shaped partly by historical record, partly by storytelling needs, and inevitably influenced by the sensitivity of portraying a real military icon. Fact 13. The simplified portrayal of Patton and Eisenhower's real relationship. The film's depiction of Patton's relationship with Dwight D. Eisenhower is far more streamlined than the historical record suggests. Verified accounts show their dynamic was complex, marked by disagreements, respect, and strategic cooperation that doesn't fully appear on screen. For storytelling purposes, the movie presents Eisenhower mostly as a distant authority figure, creating clearer dramatic tension but sacrificing nuance. Historians often point out that Eisenhower played a crucial role in supporting Patton's career during critical moments, something only lightly implied in the film. Speculation, clearly stated. Some film scholars believe the writers may have simplified the relationship to avoid overwhelming viewers with political detail. What is confirmed is that the script favored narrative clarity over intricate military politics. The result is a character dynamic that feels sharp and cinematic, even if it only hints at the deeper connection the two commanders shared in real life. Patton wasn't just built on grand battles, it was shaped by clashing visions, unpredictable challenges, and constant pressure behind the camera. Every conflict, compromise, and creative risk added another layer to the film's legacy. Knowing what happened off-screen changes how we see what ended up on screen, revealing a masterpiece forged through intensity rather than perfection.